Hello everyone and welcome. This is chapter 5.1. We are teaching from the algebra book in Holt McDougall. We are talking today about solving inequalities using addition and subtraction. So over here on your left is your learning targets. These are the, try that again. Over here on the left, these are your learning targets. They are the Common Core state standards for which this lesson addresses. And over here on your right, that's kind of, the real, this is education needs gibberish, which you may or may not understand. But this is the basics, right? These are the three things that you're going to be accomplishing in this lesson, right? You're going to be able to graph an inequality. You're going to be able to write an equation, write an inequality from a graph. So you're going to go back and forth between 1 and 2. And then you're going to be able to solve an inequality using addition and subtraction. So, let's jump right into it here. Write and graph an inequality. So here we have a word problem. The highest temperature recorded in the United States was 134 degrees Fahrenheit at Death Valley, California in 1913. That should be a capital U right there. Use only this fact to write and graph an inequality that describes the temperatures in the United States. So, it says the highest temperature recorded in the United States was 134 degrees, which means no more than 134, right? 134 has to be the highest. So we want to use an inequality to represent that. And we've talked about inequalities a little bit so far this year. But if you need to, quick refresher, right? Inequalities are these symbols. The less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or equal, and then finally greater than or equal. So we need to use one of these symbols to represent no more than 134, where 134 is the biggest a number can be. And we can use the variable x to represent the temperature. So, if we're making an inequality for this, we're saying that x can be no more than 134. So, what that means is that x has to be smaller than 134. So we want to use the symbol over here that represents that x is smaller. And if you will recall, right, that the alligator eats, that's not an alligator, that's a weird ghost thing. But anyway, it eats the bigger number. So if this is my x, then that means I want this to be less than or equal to. Because this means that x cannot be bigger than 134. And that's what we're saying with this temperature, that it can't be bigger than 134. So there's my inequality. This is an inequality. When it asks you for an inequality, you're writing something like this. And then it says to graph that. And to graph that, we make a number line. And we're going to start at 134. Let's add a couple of numbers in here just for flavor, right? 135, 136, 137. And we need to draw in a line that represents what's happening right here. And so we know that it's starting at 134. So I'm going to draw a dot here. Now, interesting question. Is it closed or open? Is it a closed circle or open circle? And again, if you're reviewing this, closed circles happen when you're using a greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. And open circles happen on a less than or a greater than. So in this case, we want a closed circle. And then again, let's just make sense of what this is asking us. This is saying x is a number smaller than 134, right? That's what the symbols here mean. So where do I want to draw this arrow? Do I want to draw it to the left or the right? I want to represent the things smaller. These to the left are the things that are smaller. And so there's my graph. So I've got an inequality that represents this situation as x is less than or equal to 134, and I've got a line being drawn to the left. And again, make sense of the situation, right? If it's 134 is the highest it can be, that's like the max, and that means everything else has to be smaller, going to the left instead. Let's do something in the opposite direction now. Let's take these graphs, which have no context, and let's just make an inequality to represent them. So, this inequality starts at 8, and it's an open circle. So I know 8 is an open circle, or excuse me, I know it starts at 8, so 8 is going to be in the inequality. I know it's an open circle, so it's a less than or it's a greater than. And we are having the arrow point to the left, which means our x is the smaller number. So if this is x, then what's the symbol that goes in the middle? It's the one that shows x being the smaller number, which is less than. So I'm going to erase this so you don't think that's less than or equal to. So that's my inequality. That's the inequality that represents this graph because x is a number smaller than 8, and this arrow shows all of the numbers being smaller than 8. Number 2 is very similar. We can see that this is a closed circle this time, which means we're using the less than or equal to or greater than or equal to signs. You'll notice that the dot here is, it looks like negative 2.5 to me. So we're looking at negative 2.5. So what symbol do we want to use in between those ones? Well, this one is saying it's everything larger than negative 2.5, which means that the x value is the bigger number. It's everything bigger or equal to 2.5. So x is the larger number, so I'm going to point the big end towards the x. And that's all we've got for this first video. If you go back to your Canvas lesson, there's a couple of a couple of problems for you to do, and we will do them together in the next slide. So please go back to your Canvas lesson and do those problems now.